Hi, my dear Astro family. Today we are going to be looking at the Vesta ingression into the sign of Aquarius, and I think this month is quite special because we're going to have a massive Aquarius stellium. So Vesta is going to be the first one to move into the sign of Aquarius, and then it's going to be followed by all our personal planets. So we're going to have Venus moving into the sign of Aquarius on the 17th, then the Sun on the 19th, then Mercury on the 20th, on the 23rd, Mars will move into the sign of Aquarius as well. And on top of that, all of them are going to be making a conjunction to Pluto as well. So there's going to be a lot of purification. That's one of the main roles of Pluto. And of course, the second one is something to do with destruction as well. But I'm going to be focusing a little bit on Vesta. Actually, someone asked me recently a very good question about asteroids and how to work with asteroids. And one of the question was, or this question was related to Proserpina. Because we have got kind of two Proserpinas in our chart. We have got Proserpina and we've got Persephone as well. And one of them is the Greek version and the other one is the Roman version. So the question was that if we have got these two asteroids, how to delineate their meaning? And their meanings are very much stemmed from the mythology. So, for example, when it comes to Proserpina, the mythology in the Roman culture focuses more on the transformation element. So, in case you don't know who Proserpina or Persephone is, she was the daughter of Ceres and she got abducted by Pluto. And she became the queen of the underworld. Now, one of the mythology, the Greek mythology, is actually focusing a lot more on the abduction part and the sorrow and the grief that the mother goes through. While the Roman version focuses on becoming the queen of the underworld. So therefore, these two archetypes are very similar, but they have got different meanings in your natal chart. So I decided to kind of talk to you about Vesta today in the sign of Aquarius because Vesta hasn't been there for since 2022. That was the very last time when Vesta went into the sign of Aquarius. But of course, at that time, we didn't have Pluto there, right? So now we have got Pluto there too. So this is going to be a very interesting ride. I'm going to be switching off the camera and I want to share the chart so that I can show you what exactly happens in the sky on the time clock. But before we do that, I would like to invite you to a very interesting webinar that I'm going to be holding, and that's going to be about the eighth house in medical astrology. Now, the eighth house has got a natural quincunx towards the rising sign, just like the sixth house. So the eighth house carries a lot of medical meaning in it. And this year, my solar return is coming up, and I'm going to have a massive stellium in my sixth house in the solar return chart. And I remember the very last time I had that was when I went through a major weight loss. Somewhere around 2020, I had a massive stellium in the sixth house, and then the following year, I had also a massive stellium in the in the sign of Aquarius, but that was in the eighth house. So 1 year, sixth house, and 1 year, eighth house. So I'm expecting that maybe I'm going to be going through a major body transformation in the upcoming year as well, but you will see. So I'm going to be able to upgrade you, or I'm going to be able to update you on that. If you would like to follow my journey, please subscribe to the channel and like the video and comment on the video and do let me know where Vesta is going to be going through in your natal chart. I'm curious to see how it is unfolding for all of us. So let me just stop the video and then I'm going to be sharing the screen so I can show you exactly what is happening. So in this video, we are looking at that massive stellium a little bit closer in the sign of Aquarius, focusing on Vesta because Vesta is the representation of focus anyway. And we're going to be looking at one asteroid as well, because the dispositor of Vesta is Saturn, and Saturn is making a conjunction to Hebe in that particular chart. So if you go on this little tab on the on solar fire, and then you just go on the in sign option, and then you can choose Vesta in the sign of Aquarius, and then you put a date here. So for example, I'm going to be putting 2018, and then you will be able to see when Vesta was in the sign of Aquarius. So we will see that 2018, December 1st, and it was there until February 1st, 2019. And then we had March 10, 2022, and then it left May 24th, 2022. And we had Vesta in the sign of Aquarius from August 21st, 2022 until November 20, 2022 as well. Now that was due to its retrograde motion. So it was a longer period of time while Vesta was in the sign of Aquarius. And now the entry is going to be happening on January 11th, 2026, and it's going to be there until March 10, 2026. So when you click on that, then basically you get a chart. And then you will be able to see exactly Vesta on 0 degree of Aquarius. So in order for us to decode this, let's just have a look at what actually Vesta represents. So, we said we are going to be focusing on Vesta today. Well, Vesta is about focus. Vesta represents our inner flame, the sacred spark of devotion, focus, and also what we are willing to sacrifice for a higher calling. So when she enters the sign of Aquarius, the focus is a little bit shifting from that traditional devotion towards more of a collective, more of an unconventional type of energy. We start focusing on the future. What's very interesting about Vesta in the sign of Aquarius, because Vesta represents a bit of a fire. But this fire isn't found in the private hearth of the home, but it is found in that kind of digital plaza, community centers, the activist circles. So this transit might mark a period where we find our sacred work through, social progress. So there could be a lot of devotion towards the collective. We might even feel kind of like this pull to dedicate our energy to causes larger than ourselves. There is a question Vesta might ask us in the sign of Aquarius. How can my unique talent serve the evolution of humanity? And that's the reason why we can be more committed to humanitarian efforts, social justice, community-led projects. Vesta was a virgin, or it was a bunch of virgin priestesses. Until the age of 40, we are talking about six ladies. They were handpicked by a man, and their duty was about keeping the flame going. And also, they had to be protecting some sacred documents as well, but that was their secondary role. So, in the sign of Aquarius, this is a fierce devotion to our individuality. So, we start pulling away from traditional relationship roles or societal expectations to pretty much reconnect with our own truth. It is a focus on getting our freedom back. Now, Aquarius is the sign of innovation, and modern astrology claims that Aquarius would be ruled by Uranus, and traditional astrology looks at it as a Saturn-ruled sign. But Aquarius either way represents breakthroughs. So Vesta has to be upgrading the ways of focusing on things in this sign. So it's kind of like when you are trying to spiritually integrate certain type of technology, for example, in your life. So imagine that you're trying to use technology for healing or spiritual connections, or Vesta represents rituals, but in the sign of Aquarius, we do these rituals in an alternative way. It's about focusing on creating new traditions that reflect a little bit more the modern world rather than sticking to the way it has always been done. It could really talk to us about scientific dedication as well, so we can focus intensely on research or inventions that solve our future problems. So I think a couple of things that we might need to be careful with Vesta moving into the sign of Aquarius, because it can kind of create this love triangle of ideas. Because with Vesta, we can be very devoted to a partner, but it might be a devotion to a cause. So, what I mean by that is that, let's say, from a relationship point of view, this could indicate that I'd rather devoted to kind of like trying to save, in a way, a person rather than focusing on the element of love. Or Aquarius is a super detached sign. So we might become more objective, we might become more detached. So because you need a higher level of focus to be able to achieve something. Um, Also, what's very interesting about that Vesta is going to be making a conjunction to Pluto pretty much immediately. And that's kind of like a high voltage alignment there. While Vesta is about the sacred flame, the focus, the devotion, Pluto is the underworld. It represents power, transformation, the deep psychological truth. So what it really means is that we start purifying our focus, and Pluto can become very dedicated as well. So this is a double-edged sword type of focus on something. We might become very devoted to figure out the truth. I would call this Vesta-Pluto conjunction is like a nuclear reactor. You know, it doesn't mean that we're gonna have nuclear, weapons and stuff like that. That's not exactly what I mean by that. However, that could be one of the manifestation of that, that there is a huge focus of nuclear power. Of course, Vesta has got this focus, and then it kind of gets amplified with Pluto's all or nothing intensity. So this makes that focus, that devotion more obsessive. Like I want to get to the bottom of something and I'm super focused on that. Whether it's a social cause, a technical project, your personal truth, but it's definitely not satisfied at all with any type of surface level answers. Pluto tends to burn away false things. So if you are committed to the wrong thing, then Pluto is trying to kind of destroy that completely. For example, let's say if it happens in your 10th house or 6th house, even in your second house, which we call as the work triangle houses, then this conjunction acts as a cosmic audit of your commitments. So if you have been devoted to a job, to a person, to a belief system, maybe out of habit or fear, then this transit will expose kind of like the lack of soul in that commitment, and it tries to burn it away. Aquarius is often kind of like a bit of a lone wolf and the rebel type of archetype. So it also reminds us that our greatest strength is when we are able to stand apart from the crowd so that we can serve our higher truth. This could indicate like huge honesties as well. Aquarius rules our social circle, for example, and it's kind of like cleaning out a particular house, wherever it is. With a Pluto Vesta conjunction, you are trying to clean out the Aquarius part of your chart. And Aquarius represents friendships and organizations. That Vesta fire illuminates the power dynamics within these groups, and Pluto's role is to cut away if it's too toxic. Maybe you might feel this kind of like sacred duties to speak up against injustice or to walk away from a group, because you might feel like that you have to be sacrificing your own integrity. Now, the other very interesting thing is that Vesta has got a lot of sexual power. Of course, they were virgins until the age of 40, so it does bring up the topic of sexuality as well. And Pluto is associated with sexual energies also. Vesta represents the sacredness of that sexual energy, while Pluto represents the power of it. So therefore, this could be a period of time when we are going through this deep healing regarding intimacy and how we are creating bonds with others. Um, this is kind of like a classic signature for tantric and transformative healing work. There could be a lot of questions around ethics of technology as well. And since Aquarius rules AI and the internet, Vesta conjunction to Pluto might suggest that, you know, we are going to be very focused in the upcoming month how we use these tools for our own benefits, as well as how it might be unethical somehow. So, what I would say with Vesta in the sign of Aquarius, and especially a conjunction to Pluto, which is going to be happening, I can actually show you when it exactly happens. Uh, so you can see that it's pretty much going to be starting right here on the 17th of January. That's exactly when Venus is going to be moving into the sign of Aquarius. So, if it feels like that something is kind of like dying off, for example, in a project, you know what? I think we should let go. The secret to Pluto is about not necessarily getting too clingy to something because it wants to cut away everything. It wants to destroy things to the bottom. And with Pluto, we should never look back. If we make a change, we need to go forward, especially in the sign of Aquarius. So Pluto's role here is to clear the space for a more authentic devotion. Yes, this energy is super concentrated. You can see Venus moves in there, and then we're going to have the moon moving there on the 19th as well, and it's going to make a conjunction to these two. And then the sun is coming around on the 19th, 20th. We can see that. So we're going to have a triple conjunction between Pluto, Venus, and Vesta. And then the sun starts coming around alongside with Mercury. So we're going to have this Sun-Mercury conjunction happening on 0 degree of Aquarius. And then they're gonna each of them are going to go through Vesta because Vesta is a bit slower. It spends approximately about 2.5 months in each sign. And then you can see that Mars is going to be joining the club as well. And basically, we're going to have a Pluto-Mars conjunction too. So these are all happening at very early degrees of the sign of Aquarius. Now, this is making a massive Aquarius stellium. And it means that, because Aquarius is the representation of groups and networking, it's pretty much the sign of we, with having the sun there, which is our identity, Mars, which is action, Venus, which is our connection. Somehow it represents that we have to come together. We cannot do things anymore alone. So 2026, January and February would be about not necessarily solo achievements, but coming together with certain type of people, friends, collective efforts, basically. And that's when we can achieve something massive. So this is kind of like the merger of, corporations and companies and community-owned businesses and certain type of activism, of course. Pluto being the heart of this stellium, it really feels like that this is a structural transformation of the internet and the AI. There is an intellectual intensity here as well because it's an air sign, so the air represents our brain, and the brain seems to be very electric here. I mean, especially with Mercury and Mars in the sign of Aquarius, the mental pace could be super staggering here. Ideas will move at the speed of light, basically. The danger of a stellium is always about burnout. Aquarius represents our nervous system. So, it's kind of like being on the verge of a nervous breakdown, unfortunately. And not to mention that we've got the Mars Pluto involvement here as well. So that voltage is incredibly high there. It's feeling wired, but tired as well at the same time. And, the brain is pretty much picking up too many. It's kind of like you're listening to three, four radio channels at the same time. Of course, there's going to be a lot of information coming towards you. There's this sacred rebel type of energy here. So Vesta carries a lot of religious type of energy to it. So it could be a religious commitment as well, but kind of like in a weird way when it comes to Aquarius. It is, this combination really tells me that I don't want to be hiding a part of my personality anymore to be able to fit in. This is a kind of mask that has become too tiring to wear. So I can imagine with all these combinations, major announcements regarding space travel, energy grids, the restructuring of global organizations. Let's see how it plays out with the UN, for example. On a personal level, you need to be looking at your own natal chart where the Aquarius part is falling, and that is looks like that there's going to be it's going to be demolished and rebuilt, especially the last 2 weeks of January. It's more of an evolution. It's a change that is about to be coming into that part of your chart. So, Aquarius, like I said, it's a dual type of sign in a way, because from a rulership point of view, because like I said, traditionally Saturn will be the ruler and Uranus would be the modern ruler of that. Obviously, when we think of Saturn, which is the planet of structure and time, that is making this energy a little bit more serious. It's about intellectual discipline. Saturn is bringing certain type of an endurance to this sign, and Aquarius can be incredibly stubborn because it's a fixed idea. It's a fixed sign, and Aquarius is idea, so it's a fixed idea. This is a scientist type of archetype who needs proof. Now, of course, the modern ruler is Uranus, which represents revolution. It's kind of like a lightning bolt type of energy, and it represents sudden change, kind of a genius. It's also about breaking the chains as well, something that we have been kind of like stuck to. So therefore, Aquarius becomes the reformer. And Aquarius is going to use the Saturnian discipline to build the Uranian future. It doesn't just want to break the rules, it wants to rewrite the system so it works better for everyone. So often this is a question, oh, which planet rules Aquarius? And I would say that both of them to a certain extent. I tend to use Saturn more in our personal chart, but when I do a collective reading, then I definitely look at Uranus as well. You know, Aquarius is the water bearer. And but Aquarius is not a water sign, and often that's where students tend to make a bit of a mistake. The water pretty much in the sign of Aquarius represents the collective emotions, the collective suffering, the wisdom of the world, and the bearer part is well, it was a human figure in Greek mythology who was a cup bearer, and then he was bearing the cup for Zeus. So this is the the collective suffering that is exposed on the human beings. And then when you look at the symbol of Aquarius, it's about pouring the water out. So this is a metaphor there for certain type of an objective service. Aquarius takes that messy emotional water out of the human experience and then processing it, try to process it through that jug of the intellect, and then pours it back uh, into the clear, lake or something like that. So that's exactly what Aquarius pretty much represents here. There is a light side and the shadow side to every single sign. So the evolved version of Aquarius is someone who genuinely cares about the progress of the humankind or species or your personal life. And the shadow side could be that we might care about humanity, but struggles to like actual humans. So obviously, therefore, like I said, it's about detachment as well. So we might end up kind of like looking us up ourselves in a dark room. Aquarius, from a positive point of view, it's a visionary type of archetype. It might be able to see into the future, like what's going to happen in 50 years' time. But the shadow side of it is that it's very dogmatic. It becomes fixed in an ideology and refuses to see the other views. The positive side of Aquarius, that it's super authentic, and I am super comfortable being a weirdo or the outsider. And the shadow side of it is just, it's rebellious just for the sake of being different or actually trying to fit in because I need validation from others. You know, Aquarius' positive side is that it's super objective, it's able to stay calm and rational when it comes to a certain type of a crisis situation. The negative side that it might become emotionally detached and it could be appearing kind of robotic. Now, in esoteric astrology, Aquarius is kind of considered the frequency tuner. Um, the job it has is to act as a lightning rod for higher consciousness. And this might explain why many Aquarians feel kind of like aliens, because often they receive downloads or ideas that are way ahead of their time, and obviously people are not going to be able to understand it. So starting the year with a huge Aquarius stellium can actually force us all to get in touch with our higher consciousness. Many people say that we are, in the age of Aquarius. Obviously, Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius until 2043, 44, so in the Pisces era, it's very much about kind of like following a leader, a guru, while in the Aquarius, it's more to do with the peer-to-peer connections, the decentralization, our collective responsibility. Now, like I said, we can be looking at the modern ruler as a dispositor, and that would be Saturn. And Saturn is making a conjunction to an asteroid called Hebe. So Hebe is actually on 27 degree of Pisces. So it's pretty much in the middle of that Saturn and Neptune conjunction, which we have been talking about for a while, right? So Saturn, in the sign of Pisces shows that this quality of devotion uh, is highly dependent on what happens in the sign of Pisces, right? And then Saturn makes that conjunction to Hebe. So Saturn is the architect here, and imagine Pisces as being the ocean. So it's kind of like we are trying to build a bridge between our physical world and our spiritual world. So Aquarius, Vesta in Aquarius is focusing on the future. But this Saturn is focusing on spiritual realms. So there's not much of a logic that Saturn actually in the sign of Pisces might allow us. Saturn is a logical planet though. So somehow we are, this is fueled by compassion and empathy and spiritual, um, discipline, basically. So there is a test in the sign of Pisces in order for you to achieve the focus of that Vesta. Now, Saturn, like I said, makes a conjunction to Hebe, and Hebe is about service industry. It is a servant type of, it's a cupbearer type of archetype, actually. I mean, in mythology, she served the nectar and the ambrosia to the gods on Olympus. So that's very interesting because with Saturn and Hebe, we make this vow of service. We make a commitment to be in service to others. It's not just about helping, for example. It's being useful. What's very interesting is that Saturn is a very mature archetype, while Hebe is a young type of archetype. She was a young girl. She was a very pretty young girl. So somehow there is this bridge or the gap between that wise elder and the youthful Hebe, a youthful helper. So it's kind of like taking on a mentorship role. Um, yes, this could indicate toxic caretaking as well, because we can get super devoted to look after that young type of energy. Um, and we might end up wanting to carry the cups for others rather than letting them carry their own, which is, of course, often is super important. So Vesta in Aquarius says, I'm devoted to a new worldly vision. And Saturn says that vision will only work if it's grounded in spiritual integrity or it has got the emotional depth. While Hebe says that the integrity is going to be proven through how you serve those in need. So there is a lot of humanitarian reformation going on here. So 2026 January and even February, it's kind of like a sacred work that involves using modern tools to perform very traditional, compassionate acts of service. So, so I'm imagining this as a digital cupbearer type of organization. It's a technology or it's an organization that is designed to deliver, let's say, clean water to spiritually support the masses. There is this nursing quality to this energy. I'm trying to tend to the need of people. So, a couple of scenarios, I can imagine that we may see the launch of a revolutionary platform um, in aid of humanitarian causes. I can imagine that you're gonna start having an experience, a sharp realization that a group or a friendship or a career path you have been so loyal to is actually draining your power rather than fueling it. So you might end up cutting the cords. Um, and I can also imagine that um, for many of us, spirituality might stop looking like just sitting on I don't know, a meditation cushion, or it starts looking like a spiritual activism, a community architecture. You might start feeling a call to take on a leadership role or to go towards something that you truly believe in. So it's about chasing your own legacy. basically. I mean, maybe I can even imagine that long-standing partnerships might need to be renegotiated to allow more freedom. For example, it's not necessarily about breaking up, it's more about evolving. And let's say as a couple, we might decide to live separately for a little while or pursue independent projects or somehow moving away from a traditional milestone just to be able to have a feel about our higher purpose. So, very briefly, just a few thoughts about how this Vesta might be playing out in our lives. So, do you let me know what you expect according to your own chart? Obviously, when you're looking at your own chart, firstly, you might want to be looking at where Vesta is placed in your natal chart. So, just to be a little bit more on the technical side, you take up your chart and then you start looking at where Vesta is. For example, Vesta is in my first house. So, generally speaking, Vesta carries a lot of focus on the physical body. And now it's moving into the sign of Aquarius. So, that's the 12th house. So, how can we bring the first and the 12th house together? And of course, you're going to have to be looking at where Saturn is. So, natally, Saturn is in the ninth house, and by transit, it's in the first house. So, how does that fit the picture? And then, this is how you can do a bit of a reading for yourself. So, guys, this is my interpretation on Vesta in the sign of Aquarius. I hope it helps. And if it does, press like, follow the channel, share the video with others. And if you would like to get more detailed information for yourself according to your rising sign, then I have got a membership program. It's available on my website, or you can do that on my YouTube channel as well. And you would be receiving detailed astrological predictions and breakdowns for each rising sign. So thank you for being here, and I will see you very soon. Take care. Bye bye.